What happens when a wealthy woman illegally uses a fake disabled parking placard while a real disabled veteran in a wheelchair sits in the pouring rain waiting for a spot that should have been his? This 38-year-old woman brushed him off, saying, "I'm only running in for 5 minutes, calm down." But she had no idea that every second of what happened next was captured on security cameras. And when Judge Frank Caprio played that footage revealing her 3-hour shopping trip while the Korean War veteran shivered outside in the cold, the entire courtroom witnessed one of the most unforgettable lessons in respect, humility, and accountability ever seen in Providence. Before we dive in, you're watching Case Closed, the channel that brings you real stories inspired by Judge Frank Caprio's legacy of compassion and justice. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a moment where the law meets true humanity. It's a rainy Tuesday morning in Providence Municipal Court. Judge Frank Caprio reviews a case that has generated significant community outrage. Victoria Ashford, age 38, wife of prominent real estate developer Marcus Ashford, charged with fraudulent use of a disabled parking placard, parking in a designated accessible space without authorization, and harassment. The incident occurred 12 days ago at 2:15 p.m. in the parking lot of the Providence Place Mall. Security camera footage and witness statements tell the story with heartbreaking clarity. Victoria Ashford was driving her white BMW X5 through the parking lot during a rainstorm when she pulled into one of only 2 handicapped accessible parking spaces near the mall entrance. She displayed what appeared to be a disabled parking placard on her rearview mirror, exited her vehicle, and walked into the mall with no visible disability. Moments later, Thomas Kim arrived in his specially equipped van with wheelchair lift. Thomas is a 74-year-old Korean War veteran who lost the use of both legs in combat in 1952. He's been using a wheelchair for 72 years. Security footage shows Thomas circling the parking lot in the rain, waiting for an accessible space. The regular handicap spot was already occupied by a vehicle with a legitimate placard. Victoria's BMW was in the only other accessible space, the one with the extra-wide area needed for wheelchair van access. After circling for 15 minutes, Thomas pulled his van next to Victoria's BMW and activated his emergency flashers. A witness, Janet Rodriguez, who was loading groceries nearby, recorded what happened next on her cell phone. Thomas lowered his window and politely asked Victoria, who was just returning to her vehicle with a single small shopping bag, if she had a disability that required the accessible parking. Victoria's response, captured clearly on video, "I'm just running in for 5 minutes. Relax, I'll be gone soon." Thomas explained that he'd been waiting for 15 minutes in the rain, that his wheelchair lift requires the extra wide access space, that he has a doctor's appointment he's now late for. Victoria's response, "Well, I'm here now. You'll have to wait until I'm done. It's not my problem. You showed up when the spaces were full." Thomas waited. Victoria walked back into the mall. The rain continued falling. Security camera footage shows what happened over the next 3 hours. Victoria didn't run in for 5 minutes. She shopped for 3 hours and 12 minutes. Multiple stores, trying on clothes, having lunch at the food court, walking normally, carrying heavy shopping bags, showing absolutely no signs of any disability. Meanwhile, Thomas Kim sat in his van in the rain. He missed his doctor's appointment. When his wife called him at 3:30 asking where he was, witnesses heard him tell her, "I'm still waiting for a parking space. Someone with a fake placard won't move." At 5:27 p.m., Victoria finally returned to her BMW, loaded her shopping bags, and drove away. Only then could Thomas access the parking space, more than 3 hours after he arrived. Janet Rodriguez, the witness who recorded the initial interaction, also photographed Victoria's placard. She reported it to police. Officers verified that the placard displayed in Victoria's BMW was registered to Eleanor Ashford, Victoria's 82-year-old mother-in-law, who has severe arthritis and uses a walker. Eleanor Ashford confirmed she did not give Victoria permission to use her placard and had been looking for it for weeks. When officers contacted Victoria 2 days later, her response was telling. "It's my mother-in-law's placard. We're family. What's the big deal? Those handicap spots are always empty anyway." Now, 12 days later, Victoria Ashford enters Judge Caprio's courtroom wearing designer clothes and carrying a Prada handbag, looking irritated that she has to be here at all. Her attorney, Stephen Walsh, follows behind, clearly prepared to make this go away quickly with a fine and an apology. Judge Caprio watches Victoria's entrance carefully. She walks with perfect ease, no limp, no assistance device, no indication of any mobility issue whatsoever. The bailiff calls the case. Judge Caprio reviews the charges, his voice making every detail clear for the record. Fraudulent use of a disabled parking placard, parking in a designated accessible space without authorization, harassment of a disabled person. Victoria's attorney immediately stands. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges she made an error in judgment. She's prepared to pay any fines and complete any community service to resolve this matter quickly. Mrs. Ashford is a busy woman with significant community commitments." Judge Caprio's response is immediate. "Mr. Walsh, your client is charged with stealing a parking space from a wheelchair-bound veteran while he sat in the rain for 3 hours. This isn't an error in judgment. This is a choice. If you're not subscribed, hit that button right now, because what happens next will show you what real accountability looks like when privilege meets justice." Judge Caprio asks Victoria directly, "Mrs. Ashford, do you understand why you're here?" Victoria nods dismissively. "Your Honor, I used my mother-in-law's parking placard. I didn't realize it was such a serious issue. I'm happy to pay a fine and move on." Judge Caprio sets down his pen. "You didn't realize it was serious to take a parking space from a disabled veteran. You didn't realize it was serious to make a 74-year-old man in a wheelchair wait in the rain for 3 hours." Victoria shifts, uncomfortably. "I didn't know how long I'd be. Things took longer than expected." Judge Caprio picks up the security footage report. "Mrs. Ashford, you told Mr. Kim you'd be 5 minutes. The footage shows you shopped for 3 hours and 12 minutes. Which part of that is 5 minutes?" The courtroom murmurs. Victoria's face flushes. "Your Honor, I lost track of time. It wasn't intentional." Judge Caprio asks the clerk to play the security camera footage. The monitor shows Victoria pulling into the handicapped space, walking normally into the mall. It shows Thomas Kim arriving, waiting, the interaction between them. Then comes the devastating part. The footage shows split screen. Victoria shopping, trying on clothes, having lunch, while simultaneously showing Thomas Kim sitting in his van in the rain. Timestamps make it clear. 2:45 p.m., Victoria browsing at Nordstrom while Thomas waits. 3:30 p.m., Victoria having lunch while Thomas is still waiting. 4:45 p.m., Victoria trying on shoes while Thomas hasn't moved. The courtroom watches in complete silence. By the end, several people are crying. The callousness is overwhelming. Judge Caprio asks Victoria, "Mrs. Ashford, what do you see when you watch that footage?" Victoria's voice is defensive. "I see myself shopping. I didn't know he was still waiting." "You told him you'd be 5 minutes. Did you forget you said that?" I got busy." Judge Caprio's voice becomes sharp. "You got busy shopping while a 74-year-old disabled veteran sat in the rain waiting for you to keep your word." He calls Thomas Kim, who's been sitting quietly in the gallery in his wheelchair, wearing his Korean War veteran cap. "Mr. Kim, would you please come forward and tell the court what happened that day?" Thomas wheels himself to the front. His voice, when he speaks, carries the quiet dignity of someone who has faced far worse than a parking lot. "Your Honor, I've been in a wheelchair for 72 years. I lost my legs in Korea when I was 19. I've never asked for special treatment, but those accessible parking spaces, they're not a convenience, they're a necessity. My van has a wheelchair lift that needs the extra room. Without that space, I can't get out of my vehicle. He continues, that day, I had a doctor's appointment for my kidney treatment. I'm on dialysis 3 times a week. I was already running late because of the rain. When I saw Mrs. Ashford in that space, I thought maybe she had a disability I couldn't see. But when I asked her, she just said I had to wait. Judge Caprio asks, Mr. Kim, how long did you wait? 3 hours and 12
minutes, sir. I missed my dialysis appointment. I had to reschedule for the next day, which meant changing all my other medical appointments for the week. And during those 3 hours, what did you do? I waited. I called my wife to tell her I'd be late. I watched the rain. I thought about how, when I was 19, in Korea, people used to thank me for my service. Now I'm 74, and someone who can walk perfectly fine made me wait in the rain because a handicapped parking space was more convenient for her shopping. The courtroom is absolutely silent. Victoria is staring at the floor, unable to meet Thomas's eyes. Judge Caprio's voice is gentle with Thomas, but firm with purpose. Mr. Kim, thank you for your service and for your patience today. He turns to Victoria. Mrs. Ashford, do you have anything to say to Mr. Kim? Victoria mumbles. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you wait so long. Judge Caprio's voice cuts like ice. You're sorry you got caught, Mrs. Ashford. If that witness hadn't reported you, if these cameras hadn't recorded everything, you'd still be using your mother-in-law's placard whenever parking is convenient. Victoria has no response. Judge Caprio calls Officer David Chen, who investigated the case. Officer Chen testifies about verifying the placard belonged to Eleanor Ashford, about Victoria's dismissive response when contacted, about discovering this wasn't the first time she'd been seen using the placard. Officer Chen produces parking records showing Victoria's BMW had been photographed in handicapped spaces at 3 different locations over the past 6 months, always displaying Eleanor Ashford's placard. This wasn't a one-time error, Your Honor. This was a pattern. Judge Caprio asks to hear the audio of Victoria's conversation with Thomas Kim in the parking lot. Janet Rodriguez's cell phone video plays. Victoria's voice is clear and dismissive. I'm just running in for 5 minutes. Relax, I'll be gone soon. Well, I'm here now. You'll have to wait until I'm done. It's not my problem you showed up when the spaces were full. The coldness in her voice makes people in the gallery gasp. Judge Caprio looks at Victoria. Mrs. Ashford, that's how you spoke to a disabled veteran? A man who sacrificed his legs for this country? You told him his medical appointment wasn't your problem? Victoria tries to explain, I was stressed. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. You meant exactly what you said, Mrs. Ashford. You believed your shopping was more important than his medical care. And that's when something unexpected happens. A man in the back of the courtroom stands up. He's been sitting there quietly the entire time. He's well-dressed, mid-40s, and he looks absolutely devastated. Judge Caprio notices him. Sir, do you have something to say to this court? The man's voice shakes. Your Honor, my name is Marcus Ashford. I'm Victoria's husband. I've been sitting here listening to everything, and I need to say something. Victoria spins. It's round, her face going pale. Marcus, what are you doing here? Marcus walks down the aisle. He doesn't look at his wife. He addresses Judge Caprio directly. Your Honor, I didn't know Victoria was using my mother's handicapped placard. My mother has been looking for it for weeks. We thought she'd misplaced it. If I had known Victoria was using it to steal parking spaces from people who actually need them, I would have stopped her immediately and reported it myself. Judge Caprio asks, Mr. Ashford, why are you here today? Marcus's voice is heavy with shame. Because yesterday, my mother told me she saw the news story about this case. She recognized her placard in the photos. She told me what Victoria had done. I came here because I needed to see for myself if my wife really did what they're saying. He looks at the monitor.
which still shows the frozen image of Thomas waiting in the rain. Now I've seen it, and I'm horrified. Victoria tries to speak. Marcus, please, let's talk about this at home. Marcus cuts her off. No, Victoria, I've heard enough. Your Honor, my father was a Marine. He taught me to respect veterans, to honor people who sacrifice for others. The fact that my wife made a Korean War veteran wait in the rain for 3 hours while she shopped, the fact that she stole my disabled mother's placard to do it, the fact that she told him his medical appointment wasn't her problem? His voice breaks. I didn't marry someone who treats people like that. I don't know who this person is. Judge Caprio speaks carefully. Mr. Ashford, are you saying you want to address the court regarding your wife's case? Marcus nods. Your Honor, I want you to know that whatever sentence you give her, she will not have my support in fighting it. She deserves every consequence. And when she's done here, she and I need to have a very serious conversation about our marriage. The courtroom erupts in whispers. Victoria is trying now, but these are tears of panic and embarrassment, not remorse. Judge Caprio thanks Marcus. Mr. Ashford, I appreciate your integrity. You may sit down. He turns back to Victoria. Mrs. Ashford, your husband just told this court he's ashamed of you. Do you understand why? Victoria can barely speak. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Caprio reviews the evidence systematically. Security footage proves she used a fraudulent placard for 3 hours. Parking records prove this was a pattern spanning 6 months. Audio proves she was dismissive and cruel to a disabled veteran. Her husband's testimony proves she stole the placard from her disabled mother-in-law. The sentence Judge Caprio delivers is comprehensive. For fraudulent use of a disabled parking placard, $2,000 fine and 60 days license suspension. For parking in an accessible space without authorization, additional $5,500 fine. For harassment of a disabled person, additional $1,000 fine and mandatory disability awareness education. Total monetary penalties, $4,500.
But Judge Caprio isn't finished. He orders Victoria to complete 120 hours of community service at Dust House, the Veterans Administration Hospital, specifically assisting disabled veterans with transportation and mobility needs. She must also write a formal letter of apology to Thomas Kim to be reviewed by the court. And perhaps most significantly, she must complete a mandatory disability sensitivity program where she will spend time in a wheelchair navigating Providence, understanding exactly what Thomas Kim faces every single day. Total financial impact? $4,500 plus attorney fees. Total time commitment? 120 hours of service. Total consequence, 60 days without a license, and a permanent understanding of what she put Thomas Kim through. Victoria's attorney tries to object. Judge Caprio's response is immediate. Mr. Walsh, your client stole parking spaces from disabled people for 6 months. She made a 74-year-old veteran on dialysis wait 3 hours in the rain. She told him his medical needs weren't her problem. Every consequence she's facing is proportional to her choices. As Victoria is processed out, Marcus Ashford approaches Thomas Kim. Mr. Kim, I'm so sorry for what my wife did to you. I'd like to cover any expenses you incurred from missing your appointment, and I want you to know that my mother's placard is now secured where Victoria can never use it again. Thomas looks at him. Mr. Ashford, I appreciate that, but what I really want is for people to understand that those parking spaces aren't conveniences, they're necessities. Your wife learned that today. Victoria begins her community service 3 weeks later at the VA hospital. Week 1, silent, going through motions. Week 5, starting to listen to veteran stories, hearing about their sacrifices, their struggles. Week 10, she meets a veteran named Robert who served in Korea with Thomas Kim. When she completes her mandatory wheelchair day, navigating Providence in a wheelchair, she breaks down. She wheels herself to a store entrance and finds the only accessible space taken by a car with no placard. She has to wait 20 minutes. For the first time, she understands what she put Thomas through. 4 months after her sentencing, Victoria requests a meeting with Thomas Kim. They meet at a coffee shop. She wheels herself in, using the wheelchair from her sensitivity training. "Mr. Kim, I made you wait 3 hours in the rain, so I could shop. I stole my mother-in-law's placard. I told you your medical appointment wasn't my problem. I was wrong about everything. I'm so sorry." Thomas listens. Then he says something that changes Victoria's perspective forever. "Mrs. Ashford, I lost my legs in Korea when I was 19 years old. I've spent 72 years in a wheelchair. I've seen people like you my whole life, people who think disabled parking is just extra convenient spots. But those spaces represent independence. They represent dignity. They represent the difference between being able to live our lives or being trapped." He continues, "Judge Caprio taught you that lesson. I hope you learned it." Never forget it. 6 months after her sentencing, Victoria has completed all requirements. Her license is reinstated. Her marriage to Marcus is in counseling. Her relationship with her mother-in-law, Eleanor, is strained but slowly rebuilding. She continues volunteering at the VA hospital, even though her hours are complete. She's learned something her privilege never taught her. Accessibility isn't a suggestion. It's a right. Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible courtroom moments, where privilege meets accountability and where judges like Frank Caprio prove that disabled parking spaces exist for people who need them, not for people who find them convenient. Hit that like button if you believe that making a disabled veteran wait in the rain reveals everything about someone's character. Drop a comment and tell us, was Marcus Ashford justified in thinking about divorce after what happened? Because this story was never just about a parking violation. It was about recognizing that accessibility isn't optional, that veterans deserve dignity, and that sometimes the people closest to us show who they really are when they think no one is watching. Marcus felt ashamed because his wife didn't just take a parking space. She took it from a Korean War veteran who had already sacrificed more than most of us ever will. Victoria Ashford walked into that courtroom believing this was a simple ticket, but she walked out realizing it was a wake-up call. A reminder that kindness matters, that actions have consequences, and that 3 hours of selfishness can become a 3-hour lesson in empathy. And that's the kind of justice Judge Frank Caprio built his legacy on. Justice that teaches, heals, and restores humanity, not just punishes. You're watching Case Closed, where we honor that legacy through real stories that remind us what compassion in the courtroom truly looks like. Before you go, make sure to subscribe, and if this story moved you, share this video so more people understand why accessibility and respect for our veterans matter.